Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. In this second part, Khristián, who is a director and PhD student of theater, shares his experience of leaving Guatemala at age 16 and going on scholarship to an international high school in India and traveling throughout the country, and how a foreigner like him was perceived by Indians. So, and you left Guatemala when you were 16, you said? So what happened in 16? Where did you go?
I was 26th of 2009. 24th, sorry. I got on a flight to Houston, and then from Houston to New York, and New York to Bombay. I moved to India.
Oh, you were not actually, you didn't come to the US then?
No.
What did you go to India for?
High school. So in the last 2 years of high school, I got kind of fed up of being there, and I had heard about these scholarships. And I applied in my second to last year, and I made it to the semifinal round, and I didn't get it. And then I applied again my senior year, and I made it to the final round, and I didn't get it.
Yeah, what was the scholarship for?
It's to do 2 years of high school, in one of these international schools.
Yeah. In
the last 2 years of high school, and so I applied twice, and both times I didn't get it. And then after the second time, they called me back, and they were like, "We have a spot. But it's in India." And all along I wanted to go to Canada because I really like cold weather. Texas is such a struggle for me. And yeah, I said yes. And then my parents, it was funny because after getting rejected twice, my parents had both told me "Oh, we don't want you to go. We really don't want you to go. We know we were going to let you because you wanted to, but we want you to stay. You're doing great. You can go to university here. You should stay." But I still left. And so, so I went to high school there. And I was so excited to finally be at one of those fucking schools. I cannot tell you how badly I wanted it.
Yeah.
And that when I got there, I learned everything about the campus and everything super quickly. My peers in the same grade thought that I was an older student because I already knew so much from the beginning. But I was just excited to be there.
Yeah. I mean, it must be fairly unique. How many people your age in Guatemala or anywhere else in the world does something like this?
Yeah, and in retrospect, I'm that was fucking balls. I think of my 11-year-old brother who's gonna be 16 in 5 years.
Yeah.
He's turning 12 this year, and I'm in 4 years he could go away to do the same shit I did.
Yeah.
That's crazy talk to me, and so it's a lot. And I don't think I think I wanted to get out so badly that I didn't really measure the consequences of what that was going to do to me. In terms of alienating me from my family, alienating me from my culture, changing the things I wanted. I don't think I measured any of that when I made the decision. I just knew that it was something else and that it was better than where I was, since I took it. I miss saying goodbye. I remember very well the night that I said goodbye to my aunts and to my mom, to my brother and my other brother. I remember my best friend at the time. I remember all of that very well. But I was just excited. And also there were a bunch of other 16-year-olds there, which 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So that
from other countries.
Yeah, I think we had 57 countries.
Wow.
So yeah, it was.
I didn't even have any notion before you told me that such programs are hosted in India.
Right, exactly. It's I think there's other international schools, but these schools are some of the most international, and not just international schools, but with scholarships, because a lot of other international schools are just really expensive elite schools. So yeah, my roommates, my first year, one of them was actually Jane. His last name was Jane. Soham Jane. From, where was he from? I think Karnataka. Yeah, he spoke Kannada with the other guy. And then the other guy was from Mongolia. And then my following year, I had a roommate from Lesotho and a roommate from South Korea. And one of my best friends was from Kerala, also from Bombay, Denmark, Austria, Mexico, of course. Yeah, my second year from Mexico, my first year from Costa Rica. Just a lot of people from like a lot of different countries. I didn't make friends with a lot of Europeans, only a few. Mostly, Danish and British, one or two Germans, and like Spanish and Portuguese people, but they're like so much closer to us. And so not with a lot of Europeans, but and like, that was when I was there, was when I started taking my art classes. I took a visual art class, I took a theater class, and that was when I was like, oh, I was so scared of doing that, but I was like, I could do that. Like, this is something I like doing, and I could get better at it. And that's kind of where that began.
Yeah. And how was it living in Mumbai?
So I wasn't living in Mumbai. I flew into Mumbai, and then we had to go by car first to Pune, and then from Pune another hour and a half outside. So we were not anywhere near a city. It was like on top of a hill. We shared the hill with another international school, but it was mostly Koreans. It was called Riverside, and then I think it was called Riverside, and then us. So I liked it. I mean, I had a lot of fun. It was very hard. I think at some point of it, I was depressed. But I learned to push myself.
Yeah.
I learned to push myself, and I learned in a number of ways. I learned some bad habits too, like working too much. But it was like, and I would do it. I absolutely would do it again. But and I think about the experience of being in India outside of the school, I think I learned that I think I told you this before, to me, there's more similarities than differences between India and Guatemala. And so I think that was the thing I took away the most. I mean, I traveled by myself when I was 18 with like other 18-year-olds. I don't know how many even like Indian 18-year-olds travel by themselves, like all over the fucking country. And so like I took.
Well, you didn't have your parents breathing down your.
No, that's what I'm saying, and I'm not saying that it's not because people don't want to. It's just it's allowed to. So like I took a 36-hour train to Odisha, and then I got on a train and went to what's the name of the town where the Dalai Lama is? Dharamshala. Yeah, I went to Calcutta. I went to Sikkim. I went to Varanasi. I went to Rajasthan. Like, I did a lot of crap that, like, I think very few 18-year-olds have especially traveling by themselves. So...
Oh, you all did all of this by yourself?
Yeah, no adults.
And so you didn't speak any Indian language at that time?
I studied Hindi when I got to school. So my subjects were Spanish literature, English language and literature, environmental science, economics, because I thought I wanted to study international relations, math, because I had to, and then theater and visual arts. But my first year, I took like a 1-year like Hindi course, and I was always just like picking up things. Like I learned how to write. I still remember some of the letters and stuff like that. And I could speak a fair amount. That in my second year there, because I was traveling with students who were the year below me. We call those our first years. I felt like I had to learn a little bit more because even though we were all 18 and one of them is actually older than me, I felt like responsible. And so I learned quite a bit.
See, you've got this vibe. This is why I was saying that I keep thinking that you're older than me.
I think it's probably just how I act. But I don't know where that comes from. But so I spoke Hindi enough to get myself out of trouble and to like...
So there was trouble that you were getting into that you had to use Hindi to get out of?
Like getting lost.
Oh, okay.
In Delhi at night.
Yeah,
that kind of trouble. Getting lost. Knowing how to talk to hijras in trains.
That is kind of an art.
It's an art. Well, I mean, they would like curse me and shit. And
you just gotta stay real chill.
I know. And I think towards the end of the 2 years, I decided that I wanted to focus on something to do with art. Graphic design and education, and I was just talking to my advisor, and I've like come full circle to that as well, because I mean, I'm doing theater, but I'm gonna spend the summer like pivoting more towards education, because I want to get better at it, and I want to help build resources for that. And so so that was kind of and then I found the school in Maine where you could study whatever you wanted. and it had graphic design courses, and so and my English teacher was an alum of that school.
Yeah.
And they offered pretty much full rides for people who were from this network of schools.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in the US.
Yeah.
I only applied there. People in the US apply to like 8 schools or whatever, or like 13, 14 schools, and I only applied to one school.
You applied to one place.
I got in, and I did not look back.
Yeah, nice. So, when you were in India, what I'm curious to know, I think I've asked you this before inside this podcast, is how were you received? Or like, because India does not have, for example, as many immigrants from outside the country as, let's say, the United States does.
They're mostly tourists.
Yeah, they're mostly tourists. So for someone who's like living there and looks pretty white, I'm curious to know what their experience is like. How were you perceived by Indians? Like how, what was that like?
I think it was a mixture of like fascination and assumptions. I think they were really shocked when they heard that I could speak Hindi and that I could speak it fairly well for the little bit that I spoke, and like I could pronounce things well. Especially because I didn't have facial hair. I think a lot of them, when I had longer hair, had trouble telling whether I was a woman or a man. And also because of the way that I dress, and so like people in the streets. I remember very well this one time in Delhi. I think I told you the story. The taxi driver was like, "Aquí Hindi bolti hai," and I was like, "Nahi, मैं Hindi अच्छा बोलता हूँ." And then the guy was like, "Oh, sorry boss." And,
sorry boss.
And I remember. Yeah, India was weird in that sense in terms of gender presentation. But I mean, the first winter that I was there, I didn't have money to come back home, so I volunteered at I don't know that I would call what I did volunteer. I stayed at an orphanage in Ahmednagar, which is an hour and a half east of Pune. Very small town. Actually, that's not true. It's a city, but it's just like very small, and it's not one of the major cities, but it's a city. And so I stayed there with a bunch of like orphanage children, like the typical like immigrant goes to a different country and like works with children. I didn't take any pictures while I was there, now that I think of it. But we made the papers. Like it was me and these two guys from like Lesotho and Swaziland, and they came to take pictures from us, pictures of us playing with the kids, and we made the papers and stuff like that. So it was this weird attention that we had. But then people made a lot of assumptions about where I was. They thought I was American or European or whatever, and nobody knew where Guatemala was. So
maybe presume that you have a lot of money. I don't know. That's something that's like a common presumption that I think Indians have anytime we see white people. We assume that they must be richer.
Money? I think that I found that especially, but it was more when I was buying things than like in markets. But it was like it made sense. I mean, I was buying stuff in like tourist markets. Of course, the white kid in Colaba market is gonna have more money than like the guy who's actually selling stuff. But I got really good at bargaining. I got very good at it. I would be ruthless. I would ask for like half or a third of what they would tell me, like from the beginning, because I knew they were ripping me off.
Damn.
And then I would be like, okay, no, I'm walking away, and I would walk away. And when they really didn't want to, they'd be like, okay, go away. But then the other ones would be like, okay. I give you best place.
Nice.
And so I got really good at bargaining. Probably like the first time in my life that I was good at asking for the things that I actually wanted.
Sometimes I guess it's kind of like a survival strategy in India. Like you guys, you really gotta, there's not a lot of like, oh, you say one thing, you like mean another, it's not gonna work. So this thing that you mentioned about the gender perception, would you say that even Guatemala is pretty different? Like you said, you found that, okay, like the example that you gave with the taxi. You've said, India was a little weird. You are saying with respect to Guatemala, right? Because that was your other standard. So,
no, I think it was just weird. I think in Guatemala, the reason my gender was read differently, I still think Guatemala is weird when I go back, because not only I look foreigner, I look androgynous to some people because of my hair and the colors I wear and whatever. And I definitely draw a lot of attention to me. Like my friend is Shamanic, and I sometimes go to like malls together.
Is what?
Is Shamanic. She's indigenous. Yeah. She's Cachiquel, and she also went to these schools. But she wears her traditional costume, and that is like the only people who like. If you go to a mall in Guatemala City and you're wearing that, people are gonna think you're a maid. Like that's how like classist and so I always just joke that like she and I, like whenever we go to a supermarket, a mall, we always get stared at. Me for they probably think that I'm like some kind of gringo, weird gay something, and that she's the maid. Yeah. So it's not just that it was only in India. I think I became aware that I was read more ambiguously when I was in India, but it's still the case when I go home.
Yeah, I see. Thanks for joining us today in the Room of Lives. In the next part, Khristián shares why he gave up studying and performing stand-up comedy in favor of directing. He then describes how his work challenges the autocratic culture of theater directors by tracing it back to its white European origins. We explore his work on the intersection between theater and science and discuss why our world needs better scientific literacy and communication. Then we talk about science versus culture when it comes to food, medicine, and psychedelics.